I finally said no. Nothing crazy. Calm down. I didn't cuss anybody out. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't say, don't you ever call me again. I just said, I can't do that today. That's reasonable, right? Perfectly reasonable. Nobody, went home to glory. The world kept spinning. So somebody explained to me why 5 minutes later I was sitting there thinking, maybe I should call these folks back. Maybe I could move some things around on my schedule to fit them in. Maybe I was sounding rude. Maybe they really needed me. Maybe I should explain better. Oh, wait, hold up. Why am I negotiating against a boundary I just set? That's when I realized something, y'all. I wasn't struggling with the boundary. I was struggling with the woman I thought the boundary made me. Selfish, difficult, unreliable, mean girl activity, changed. Ooh, there it is. You changed. Strong ones know how that sentence can hit hard because maybe, guess what? I have changed. But the question is, why did everybody benefit more from the version of me who never said no? Welcome back to Who's T TV. I'm Myss T. And if you watch our last conversation about the strong one trap, I left you with one question. What will this yes cost me? But I realized something. That's only half of the problem. Because what happens when you finally look at the cost? You decide it's too darn expensive and say no, right? Now you've got another bill. Guilt. Baby, guilt will have a strong one returning something she just bought. See, you finally bought yourself some peace. And then 5 minutes later, excuse me, can I return this? Apparently somebody's disappointed in me. That's what we're talking about today. Why can a boundary make perfect sense right here in your head and you still feel absolutely terrible inside your body? And more importantly, does feeling guilty mean you did something wrong? Because I used to treat guilt like evidence. If I felt bad after saying no, I assumed I must have done something bad. Think about it like that. Somebody asked me for something. I don't have the time. I definitely don't have the energy. Maybe I simply don't want to just do it. So I say, no, then I feel uncomfortable. And instead of letting myself be uncomfortable, I start building a case against myself. Woo! Yup. Well, maybe I could have. They don't ask often. I won't take that long. I don't want them thinking I'm acting funny in these streets. You know how that goes, right? 5 minutes ago, the answer was no. Now you're your own opposing attorney. Your Honor, we would like to reopen the case. For what? Nobody brought new evidence. You just got uncomfortable. That is what I had to start noticing. Sometimes the guilt wasn't telling me, T, you did something wrong. Sometimes it was telling me, T, you did something different. But that's it. Because those are not one and the same. Different can feel wrong when you've spent years following the same rules over and over again. Strong ones, we have rules. Oh, we have a ton of rules. Nobody wrote them down. Nobody handed us a handbook. But somehow, some way, we know those rules. I answer, I help, I show up, I figure it out, and I don't inconvenience others. Other people. I don't ask for much. I don't make my problems everybody else's problems. And the biggest one, I can't handle it. Does that sound familiar? So when you suddenly say, I can't do that today, you haven't just changed your answer, violated the rule. Sometimes that rule has been running your life for 20, 30, 40 years. Of course, it feels strange, but strange doesn't automatically mean that you're wrong. That's where I had to start separating two things. What happened from what I felt about what happened? What happened? I said no. What did I feel? Guilt. Okay, cool. Now, did I lie? No. Was I cruel? No. Did I deliberately hurt somebody? No. Did I break a promise? No. So what exactly am I guilty of? That right there is the question. What exactly am I guilty of? Because sometimes I couldn't answer it. I just knew somebody might be disappointed in me. It's real, y'all. But now we're getting somewhere. Because disappointment and harm are not the same thing. Somebody can be disappointed that you said no without you even have done something wrong. They wanted something. You couldn't or wouldn't provide it. They're disappointed. That's cool. That's allowed. But somewhere along the way, I started believing it was my responsibility to prevent people from being disappointed. Do you know how exhausting that job is? Because now I have to manage my life and their feelings about my life. No, I can't do both. And before anybody says, but Myss T, you don't understand my family dynamics. Oh, I think I understand more than you think. Because sometimes they will get mad, y'all. So let's stop pretending everybody's going to apply all that growth I see in you, friend. You say no, and somebody might hit you with, wow, okay, well, don't worry about me. I said I got it. And you don't have to do anything. You just know that tone. Or here comes the classic. You've changed, baby, you changed. And you know what? Maybe you have. Maybe you have changed from somebody who automatically says yes to somebody who thinks about it first. Maybe you changed from somebody who abandons their own plans every time that phone rings to somebody who checks their own schedule, their own calendar. I see you. Maybe you changed from somebody who proves love through exhaustion to somebody who finally understands that love should not require you to disappear. So yes, I changed. So now what? Because I started asking another question. If somebody only experiences me as loving when I have no boundaries, what exactly have they been calling love? My availability? My obedience? My problem solving? My money? My time? My silence? My willingness to be inconvenienced? Because love and unlimited access are not one and the same. And that was a hard distinction for me. I had confused being there for people with always being available to people. Those are two different things, y'all. I can love you and I can still be unavailable tonight. I can care about your problem and not make it my responsibility. I can understand why you're disappointed and still keep my answer. Oh, that last one took some work though. Because the strong one wants to explain, don't we? No isn't enough. We need a presentation. Well, see, what happened was I have this thing tomorrow and I haven't slept in weeks. And earlier this week, stop. Why am I presenting evidence? Am I requesting permission to have a boundary? Because that's what over-explaining started feeling like. I wasn't explaining so they would understand. Sometimes I was explaining because I wanted them to approve my no, a cosign. And that was different. And if they didn't approve it, here comes the guilt. Now I'm back negotiating against my own terms. That's when I had to learn something I still work on till this day. A boundary does not require everybody involved to agree that it's reasonable. Woo! Because if everybody has to approve my boundary, it's not really mine, is it? Now here's where it gets super duper uncomfortable. Brace yourself. Remember what we talked about in the Strong One Trap? Sometimes being needed becomes part of how you know you matter. So what happens when you start saying that? You're not only reducing what you carry, you may also be reducing something you've been using as proof of your value. Think about that. Somebody calls, they need you, you show up, you solve it, they thank you, you mattered. Again. For years. But now you set a boundary. They figure it out without you. Wait, what? They figured it out without me? There can be relief in that. But if we're telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, there can also be something else. Who am I if they don't need me? That's why I don't think every strong one is simply addicted to helping. Sometimes we're attached to what helps and proves. That's what's important. You're reliable, you're good, you're necessary, you're loved. And that is sitting underneath your yes. Your no is going to feel like you're risking something much more than somebody else's disappointment. It can feel like you're risking your place in the ecosystem. That's why responsible boundaries can feel like betrayal. You may not be betraying them at all. You may be betraying an old version of yourself. The version who said, I'll always be there. I'll figure it out for you. Call me anytime. Don't worry about me. I got this. And now the woman or man you become is saying, actually, I don't have it today. You tried it. Your old identity is looking at you like, Who do you think you are? Maybe that's a real conversation. Who do I think I am? That's exactly why I wrote the loyalty tax. Why being the strong one is costing you everything. Because the bill isn't always somebody taking advantage of you. Sometimes the bill is the guilt you pay when you finally stop allowing it. Sometimes the bill is the anxiety after saying no. The explaining, the second guessing, the fear that somebody is going to think differently about you. And sometimes you pay the loyalty tax before anybody even asks. You imagine their disappointment and say yes just to avoid feeling it. That's expensive. Because now somebody doesn't even have to pressure you. You just pressure yourself for them. Think about that. They ask, want to say no. You imagine their reaction. You feel guilty about a reaction that hasn't even happened yet. So you say yes. They didn't have to argue. You did all the work. And that's how powerful these old rules can become. So I just started using another question. Last time it was, what will this just cost me? This time is, what am I actually guilty of? Not, do I feel guilty? I already know I might. What did I actually do? Was I cruel? Dishonest? Did I break my word? Did I deliberately cause harm? If I did, then I needed to deal with that. Apologize, correct it, own it. But if the answer is I disappointed somebody because I wasn't available, that hits different, y'all. I can survive somebody being disappointed in me. I can. They can survive being disappointed. True. That's a hard sentence for the strong one, though, because we've spent years running around trying to make sure everybody was cool, copacetic, right? Sometimes everybody isn't going to be okay with your decision. I need you to sit with that. Let them have their feelings. You don't have to climb inside those feelings and redecorate everything. So here's something that I encourage you to try. The next time you say no and that guilt shows up, don't immediately fix it. Don't call back. Don't send that extra paragraph in a text. Don't start rearranging your schedule. Sit there for a minute and think. Let yourself feel uncomfortable. Then ask, what am I actually guilty of? If your answer is deal with it, if you don't, maybe what you're feeling isn't proof that the boundary was wrong. Maybe you're just experiencing what it feels like to stop following an old rule. And new can feel wrong, but it's normal. Because here's what I'm starting to understand at this big age. A boundary isn't always going to give you immediate peace. Sometimes the boundary has to come first. Peace catches up later, and that's cool. You don't have to feel completely comfortable to make a healthy decision. You don't have to stop loving people to stop overextending yourself. You don't have to become cold as ice just because you're finally seeing it all clearly now. The strong one doesn't have to disappear. He or she just needs a new job description. He or she can still help. He or she can still love. He or she can still show up and show out, but he or she doesn't automatically report for duty every time somebody else has an emergency. That brings us to another problem. Because let's just say you start doing this, and you stop automatically saying yes, and you stop over-explaining. You stop letting people be disappointed. You stop fixing everything. Or you start letting them feel disappointed, and you stop fixing everything. Then something strange is going to happen. Somebody actually does change towards you. See, the calls slow down, the relationship feels different. Maybe somebody gets distant. Maybe somebody says, oh, no, they didn't. You aren't the same anymore. Now what? Because it's one thing to say boundaries reveal relationships, but it's another thing when the relationship being revealed is somebody you love. You know, you love them. That's where we're going next. What happens when your boundary changes the relationship? Because sometimes the thing you're afraid of actually happens. And then we have to decide what that means. Until then, remember, feeling guilty does not automatically mean you did something wrong. Before you take that boundary back, ask yourself, what am I guilty of? What am I actually guilty of? I'm Myss T. I'm the gas station. I fill you up so you can move, but you still gotta drive. And I'll see you in the next one.